Keith Rucker at VintageMachinery.org. Well, guys, we're back to working on the surface grinder. We had left off last time. We had got the table ground flat here, and I told you I wanted to come back, get some measurements on this, make sure everything was good. I got my indicator set up to do that. And also we want to go ahead and get the magnetic chuck mounted onto the machine and get the actual chuck ground in place as well, so that this machine is pretty well ready to go after that. So I think what I'm going to do is get you zoomed in here. We got a tenths indicator on here measuring how flat this table is going back and forth, show you what we ended up with, and go from there. Start out here, let me show you my setup. We've just again got the indicator mounted here. I just got it mounted on the main spindle that goes up and down, and the nice thing is here is I've got my real fine adjust in here, and I can zero that indicator out very easily just using the column going up and down, which it's got actual tenths adjustments in it. We're measuring over a distance of 24 inches, and that's the size chuck that goes on this is a 24-inch magnetic chuck, and that's basically the length of our table that we have to work with. So keep in mind, this is a pretty large area in the grand scheme of things, 24 inches. And when we're looking at flatness, it is over a pretty large area. So I'm going to zoom you in real tight on that indicator where you can see it and show you what we got. All right, so I've got the table moved all the way over to the right side of what we're dealing with, and we've zeroed out the indicator. And what I'm going to do is we're just going to run this table back and forth a couple of times, and I'll let you see what happens with the needle. So we got a little bit of loading going on there, so it's dropping down to, that was about 4/10 low there, and it comes up a little bit. We go back, again drops down. That was about 2 or 3/10 that time. This time when we get over here, notice when I got a little bit of loading issue going on here, so depending on which way I'm going, it's moving that needle a couple of tenths. I don't know what I can do about that, but watch when we get down here on this end. So I'm about a 0.5 thousandths. As soon as I go back, it drops it back to about 3/10. So bottom line, coming across here, I'm saying we probably got, 7, 8, 10 thousandths of an inch of run out in this, or adjustment, or going up and down. But before we get too excited about that, I want to show you something. I'm going to come over to this end, and I'm going to stop, and I want you to watch that needle. It starts dropping down, and we're within about a 10 thousandths of zero right now. So what's going on? Why are you seeing that? All right, so let's explain what's going on and why that's happening. So when this table is going side by side, this is riding on some ways. There's actually an oil pump that, as this table is turned, is pumping oil up on those ways. What you're seeing there is actually the oil coming in between those ways, and that the thickness of that oil is what we're actually measuring here. I can go across this table and stop at just about any place on here and let it settle down, and it's going to within a 10 thousandth or two of being on zero, which tells me that I'm actually cutting a very flat plane going across here. I suspect that in operation, when you have the downward pressure of the grinding wheel grinding, that's probably pushing some of that oil out. And we're just getting the chuck up on here is going to add some weight to this table. But the bottom line is as I go across here and stop, it's extremely flat. I just have to kind of let that oil settle out. So I'm very happy with what I'm seeing. So over a 24-inch travel here, at the very worst, we're talking 0.5 thousandths, 7/10, something like that, with no load or anything else. But again, the grind is almost perfect. I mean, it is within probably 2 10,000ths of an inch. And that's back on zero there. You just go anywhere on here and let it settle, and it just goes right back to zero, which tells me I've got a very flat surface going across here. I'm happy with what I got. We're going to go with it like it is. So now let's work on getting the actual chuck mounted up and checked out and ready to go. I've got my mag chuck sitting up on the table right now. What I've done is I've actually flipped it upside down. This is the bottom that's up, and the first thing I want to do is come in here and just put a fresh grind on the bottom of this, just so we have a good matching surfaces there. You know, this has seen no wear, but there is some rust on here and some little high places. I have cleaned this up as best as I can, but I think I'm just going to knock it off and let it go. So I've already got my wheel dressed. I've already got the machine warmed up. Turn my mag plate on so it's not going anywhere. And let's see. And we'll come down here. You know, I don't know how flat this is in relation to the new grind on here, so what I'll do is I'm just going to kind of touch off real lightly somewhere and kind of fish my way around this table and look and find where the high spot is on here, if there is a high spot, and there probably is, and then we'll work off of that and start grinding. Getting down real close. I'm going to go to my fine adjust wheel. All right, we're touching off there, and I'm actually going to come up about 1/1000th or 2. And now what I'm going to do is just kind of coat around here and just real kind of coarsely. What I'm looking for is any sparks. I'm looking for my high spot. All right, so I got a little bit of sparking right in there. Sparking a little bit in here. We're starting to touch off over on this side. I may have to raise it up just a little bit more. I think I'm going to raise it up just a little bit more. What that's telling me is that this side is probably just a little bit higher than the back. And that's probably just from wear on the table. Biggest thing I'm trying to do is just make sure we're not going to crash the wheel and take off a huge cut somewhere unexpectedly here. Alright, so we are going now, and we're just going to let this thing work its way across and see how it goes. It's just taking a real light pass right now, and we'll continue this until we get it cleaned up, and then we should be able to flip it over and grind the top. Alright, we got that cleaned up all the way across. I've come here on my shop vac and just kind of cleaned this up. Get any of that little bit of dust that's standing there left. I'm going to take a stone now and just kind of stone this. And all I'm doing is I'm just removing any spurs that we may have around these holes in here. And that looks really good. So let's see if we can get this off of here, flipped over, and mounted onto the machine. All right, we're going to lift this off. I got a sling on here. We're just going to use my engine hoist. It's just too heavy for me to even consider picking up by myself. This is how I've been moving it around. All right, I'm going to take this over to my welding table and flip it over, and we'll put it back on there. Before we bring the chuck over here, I want to just wipe this down really good, and come in here with my stone. And again, just deburr it, and there shouldn't be any high spots in here, but it's good practice to do this. And use my bare hand, wipe it off. It feels very clean. And I'm going to just, I want to put a little layer of oil on here to just give some protection in between these two layers. So this is just a real light, it's actually the spindle oil that I use on this machine. So that should be good. Chuck is matted on here now. We got just some T-nuts on either side that'll clamp this thing down. So one more time, now we're going to dress the actual face of the magnetic chuck to get it flat and in the same plane as the rest of this machine, since we've done some work to it. What I will do is I will turn the magnet on while I'm grinding this. That's, there's different thoughts on how this should be done. My thought is that the magnet is usually on when you're running it, so that's really probably how you need to do it. And that's how I'm going to do it. So I think what I'll do is we'll get in here, I'm going to probably redress that wheel, and we'll go ahead and start dressing the top of this magnetic chuck. Before we start grinding on this chuck, just a quick little update. So off camera, I was getting things ready. I flipped the power switch over here and I saw sparks pop down here. Turns out my old power cord, I'd already taped it up because it was starting to crack and whatever. Well, it's just the wires are just old and brittle, and right up here in the plug, we got a little short. It didn't mess anything up, it doesn't look like, but I have come in here and got a new cord, a new plug, a new receptacle, got all this wired up now. Also, just a little bit about the electronics back here. This chuck on this is actually a direct current, 120 volt powered chuck. It was the original equipment on here. A lot of your surface plates just have a lever that you flip that kind of engages the magnet on it. This one is actually electric. And when I got this surface grinder, there was this huge box on the side that had a power converter in it that converted 220 volt into single phase, or 220 volts into direct current, so alternating current to direct current, and it outputted 120 volts in DC. I didn't really want to use that because I had talked to a couple of people, and there's some rather old electronics in there. It looked like something out of a Frankenstein movie. And bottom line is that there was some hazards with that particular setup. So I replaced it with just a simple rectifier, which is just a little electronic device that converts alternating current to direct current. It's about the size of a receptacle like you would put into your wall, and it replaced this huge box up here. But it needed 110 volt input, so basically what I did is I just got it plugged into the wall rather than trying to go through the three-phase system on here. So anyway, that's all hooked up. There's a drum switch down here on the front. When you turn it on, it actually turns a light bulb on up there, and your magnet is engaged. And you can, on this drum switch, you can reverse the poles, and I believe that's to demagnetize a part. So basically, you reverse the poles on the magnet, and if your part magnetizes, you can flip it over there and demagnetize it as well. So anyway, we have got our diamond on here. We're going to dress our wheel. I've already warmed up the surface grinder again because we took a little break. Had to go to town and get parts, so we're going to get this wheel dressed and grind this chuck in. All right, just like before, I'm going to kind of run around on here and just See if I have any high spots. Well, I think I'm going to call this done. You know, it's not, there's some dings in here, there's some gouges where somebody dug the wheel into it, whatever, but this is flat. It's flat enough for me to use, and you know, I'm sure that this chuck will get ground, reground several times over the years, and as we continue to go down, a lot of stuff will clean up. But some of the stuff I'd have to take 1/8 of an inch out of the table to clean it up completely, and it's just not worth it to me. So I think we're going to go with that. Well, guys, I think that's about what we're going to do for this episode. We've got the surface grinder is now, as far as I'm concerned, it's in good shape. It's ready to go. We're ready to use this thing, and I've got a job for it coming up pretty soon that we really need to get done, and that's back on that making a custom threading tool for a modified square thread that I got to do for a lead screw for a lathe that I'm doing for a viewer. And unfortunately, that project has just kind of drug on because of things going on in the shop and needing to get the surface grinder fixed up and ready to go. I've got my scraping class coming up. In fact, when this video goes live, we'll be right in the middle of a scraping class, so I've had a lot of stuff getting ready for that. So as soon as that scraping class is over, we're going to get back onto the threading job and hopefully get that knocked out. But again, we need the surface grinder to do that. And while this machine is by no means what I would call restored, it is in good operating condition. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to operate it and use it for various projects around the shop. I'm excited to have a surface grinder. This is a tool that I have been needing in my shop for many, many years. and just never have had one. In fact, I haven't really had one that I could use since I was working in a machine shop back in the late 80s. So I'm really excited to have this tool back in the arsenal. And I think we've got a pretty good one here in this Landis unit. So with that, that'll be a wrap. Thank you guys for watching. And tune back in soon. We'll have some more stuff coming up for you.